Welcome back to Southern Life. On today's video, we're going to be looking at real estate from the Tampa area all the way down into Southwest Florida to determine whether these prices are overvalued or if there are still deals to be found in the state of Florida. Overall, right now in Florida, inventory is massive. Sellers are plentiful, buyers are hard to come across. And still, despite the fact prices have come down, I believe that overall prices still do not correlate with the value of these properties. In other words, to generalize, there's still a long way for prices to drop in Florida before, as a general rule, the public is getting a deal when buying. Now, usually when the supply is massive and prices are coming down, it's a good time to buy. But unfortunately for most of Florida's real estate, even with these price reductions and all the options you have, I still think prices need to fall considerably in most areas before buying is a deal overall. Deals are out there, they can be found, but there's just very few and far between right now. We'll start off along the coast of Tampa Bay, where much of St. Petersburg Beach and all the adjacent islands along Pinellas County are still looking like a mess from the last hurricanes. The overall outlook for this area is grim. Restaurants are closing, hotels haven't been able to rebuild, real estate is sitting on the market forever, prices drop and there's no buyers. But despite all that, are there opportunities on St. Petersburg Beach? There's a lot of downward momentum along the coastline of Tampa Bay, but does that mean that there aren't deals out there? That there aren't particular properties that could be opportunities for people? For $325,000, you can buy an older house on St. Pete Beach, that's on the island, that has some hurricane damage. It's a nice older home with good bones, but it did flood during the hurricane, and you got to throw a lot of money on this property to make it really livable. On top of that, it's practically not the type of property you're going to be able to insure, so the liability here is massive. Practically uninsurable with a lot of liability from another hurricane. This seems like a very risky property. It's not a great proposition, but then you got to think for a minute. $325,000 for a house on the island. You can't even find the same property in the inner city of Tampa for that price point. So what I'm trying to say is, if you really want to live on an island in Florida, you want to live that beach lifestyle, and you're willing to do all the work yourself and take on all the risk, this may not be a good investment property. But if you yourself really want to live on the island and you're okay with all the risk and your neighborhood looking like a complete apocalyptic wasteland like it does right now, I mean, just take a look around this neighborhood. You can see that every other house is still basically a construction site. I mean, how bad do you really want that beach lifestyle? If you're a single dude and you want to live near the water, or you got a lot of work in this area, you understand the risk and the liabilities of buying this property, you're okay with the fact that the island right now looks like a ghost town, it's still going to be a ghost town or a construction site for a long time. And you know that this could happen again at any moment. But hey, if you're okay with all that, you just for some reason need a piece of property on the island for whatever reason. Maybe you have a business there. Whatever the reason, I think for the right person, this could be an opportunity. Overall, as an investment, no. But there's a lot of fear right now. And where there's fear is sometimes where the largest profits are made. So right now, everybody's afraid of touching these islands, so perhaps that is where the opportunities are going to be generated. Because for one thing that I've learned over the years from buying real estate, houses and mobile homes and pieces of land, is that sometimes risk can be very rewarding. And if you go with safe bets, sometimes that doesn't really give you the best profit margin. It takes adventurous investments to have good profits. And I've learned with real estate investing that the properties that I thought were going to be the most profitable actually ended up being money pits. And properties that I thought were a huge liability actually turned out to be very profitable. Sometimes real estate investing can be very difficult to gauge. The properties that you think are really a liability or risk can end up being very rewarding, and properties that you thought were a sure investment can end up being a horrible one. From personal experience, I've learned to follow your heart and just hope that your gut instinct is right. But let me hear your thoughts and opinions on this first property. Do you think it's a deal or do you think it's not? Make sure you timestamp your comments so we know what the crap you're talking about. But somewhere in Tampa is a giant house for $1.3 million. It's got 4 bedrooms. It's got kind of a small lot, but it's a big house. It's got a lot of nice, neat stuff on the inside. I think at that price point, there's always going to be a buyer in the Tampa area. And if you ever decide to sell that property, it shouldn't be too hard to offload it. Now back on St. Pete Beach for $340, you can get a small little cottage that is completely gutted from the hurricanes. There's a lot of these. Some of these little cottages before the hurricanes were like almost $500,000. So if you were to buy it for $3 something, you would probably be at about $500,000 by the time you're done remodeling it. And at which point another hurricane could come and you could start this whole process all over again. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense, except for the fact that if you can cut costs, maybe if you can get a better deal on it, and if you're holding on to this property for a very long time, maybe in the future it could be worth it. But I think most of these properties are not for individuals looking to make profit on an investment. These are properties for individuals who for some reason or another want to live on a freaking island, which is pretty much a nightmare with traffic, congestion, tourists, especially during holidays. I mean, you can't even move in and out of these islands practically with tourist season traffic. But hey, to somebody out there, they want to live on an island and that's the money they got. Now, I know this isn't a conventional method of investing, but if I had $300,000, I'd offer it on this property, little by little, do all the work myself, and know that in the future, I might be sitting on $500,000. Now, people who have money don't invest that way, and this kind of stacking money on top of money thing isn't the way other people invest their money. But if you're poor and you have a little bit of money, it may be the only chance you got to really increase your net worth. And if you're not paying for a place to live, you're saving that money in the meantime. So I actually made my net worth doing that. I bought a mobile home for like $40,000. I put some money in it and I got like $107,000 out of it. Now, I probably put more than $107,000 in it, but I was living there the whole time, so I still went from 47 to 100. And then I bought a house for like 65. I sold it for 138. And the same deal, I put money into it, but the end result was still higher. And you know, flipping in and out of houses and increasing your total value of the house is one way that people actually make money. So if you don't know this, one method that a lot of people don't talk about with real estate is that if you have $300,000, you can buy that house. Eventually, after you fix it, it'll be worth $500,000. And then with $500,000, let's say right now you made that first flip. Here's a little house in St. Pete for $625. It's been sitting on the market for a very long time. It's a small, older house and needs a lot of work. But guess what? Across the street from your house is a $5 million house. Yeah, it's an older little house, but it's got the right address. It's prime real estate. You could buy that little house, fix it up, and maybe one day somebody will pay $900,000 for it. From an investment perspective, would it make sense to try to buy this house for $500,000 or $600,000, put a few more $100,000 in it just because there's a $1 million house across the street or a $5 million house across the street? Probably not. But for an individual that's going to live in the house and little by little try to flip their money upwards, that could be an opportunity. Or hey, let's say you got $500,000 or $600,000, but you want to live in a $5 million neighborhood. That's a great option as well. So that could be an opportunity for the right person. But in general, as an investor right now, you're buying houses in Tampa, or you have any other type of investment mindset, does that make sense to pay $600,000 for a little house because there's a $5 million house across the street? Probably not, especially if it needs a lot of work. But like I said, in this market right now in Florida, there are opportunities, but you just have to know what your lane is. We all think differently. For example, for $27 million, you can get over 40 acres along the coastline of Tampa. This is kind of like in the Clearwater area. Now, coming from Naples, Florida, for $27 million on the beach, you might get 1 acre. So you're getting 40 acres along the beach. From my perspective, if I had $27 million, I'd buy that. But if you see how long that property's been on the market, 590 days. Do you know how many people with $30 million ready to go looked at that property either on the internet or in person, and they know something about this real estate market that I don't? From my perspective, being from Naples, 42 acres of beachfront, for that price tag is a steal. But there's something about this particular area that I don't understand, that maybe the people that have that money haven't considered buying it. For example, there could be some liabilities here, and it's not exactly hurricanes. It could just be securing the property. It could just be people with boats coming onto the property on a daily basis, and the property needs to be constantly monitored. I'm not sure exactly what the liabilities are. If somebody has more experience, please break it down. But from my perspective, that is a deal. That's a steal. Obviously, you're not going to be able to build anything on that property. I mean, that property there is probably preserved lands, and there's all types of regulations for building or maybe even remodeling that house. I'm really not sure. Maybe it's just not worth it. If somebody in the comment section knows better than me, please break it down. Now, I've made a lot of videos talking about real estate in Tampa. What I've never done is talked about price points in Tampa. And I have been living in the Tampa metro area now for over 3 years. And this is the first time ever that I've talked about price points in Tampa. And that is because I'm very careful to give information to my audience that is misleading or just malinformed. This is the first time that I'm taking this step and talking about prices directly in the Tampa area, directly in Tampa. And that is because I don't understand the market in Tampa. I'm not really familiar with it like I am Southwest Florida. So I don't want to make a statement that is misleading, and maybe my audience can perceive me as an idiot if they know what I'm talking. Well, you know what I mean? Like, if somebody stupid thinks I'm stupid, then that doesn't matter. But if somebody educated sees my video and they know that I'm misinformed, then I don't want to look stupid to smart people. I'm okay looking stupid to stupid people, but I don't want smart people to think I'm stupid. A lot of YouTubers hop on different cities every week like if they intimately understood these markets to be talking about these topics, but I'm very careful with that. And at the end of the day, it's just my personal opinion, and when it comes to information like this, I'm very careful, because I like to see an email from somebody saying, "Hey Jose, I saw your video. Here's a very generous donation. You made me thousands. It's the least I could do is thank you for what you've done." So I'd rather get an email like that than get an email from somebody telling me you're a complete idiot. I lost a lot of money because of you, which I'm sure a lot of these YouTubers are probably getting those emails right now in the current market. And despite the fact it's just my personal opinion, I would rather receive praise than criticism from people who listen to my videos and then made some massive mistakes. Now, from a long-term outlook perspective, it's interesting that a house on St. Petersburg Beach where you can walk to the beach can be worth as much as a house like in Lehigh Acres in the middle of nowhere. But the issue is that today the overhead has increased dramatically from property taxes, insurance, just the cost of everything. And then there's the unpredictability of the markets. There's a natural disaster. Politics are playing a role into where people go or where they don't go nowadays. So all that makes a more volatile situation where, yes, a house on St. Petersburg Beach can roughly be worth about the same as a house in Lehigh Acres, but the liability and risk and impracticalities of living here on this island prone to all these problems and tourism and ups and downs of the economy means that for a lot of people, it actually makes more sense to pay the same amount of money to live in a bad inner city neighborhood where there's more stability. And that's a difficult concept to grasp your head around, because usually we look at real estate as, okay, you can walk to the beach here, so it should be worth more than just a bland, regular neighborhood. There's something unique about this property. You know, there's something nature, something different, a beach that you can walk to, but that's not the way things work anymore. The overhead costs and practicality and all the vulnerabilities of the market means that yes, a house on an island today in Florida can be worth as much as a house in a bland or even dangerous neighborhood. Could there be a silver lining in that? Perhaps. But I think most people today don't look at real estate as what are you getting for your money up front, but what's it going to cost to keep that property, maintain it, insure it. Man, you got to insure it, dog. Interestingly, when it's a young millennial person that wants to have that suburban lifestyle, then they look at the upfront cost of the house, but they don't look at the long term of their commute and other related expenses. So it's interesting how somebody who wants to live outside of their budget will make that risk happen, but somebody looking at future outlook with investment and the value of their property would never take that same risk. So different strokes for different folks or something like that. Example, in the outskirts of Tampa, way the crap out there, for $325 you can get a 4.2 with an HOA fee that's kind of high now, but could get even higher, because if that community doesn't sell all those lots, then the people that did buy lots are going to have to maintain the entire community. So the commute there is horrible, traffic's horrible. I mean, there's a lot of issues that would make that property much more affordable. If that same exact house way out in the suburbs that's like $325,000 just happened to be in the core of Tampa, it would be worth twice that. So what are a lot of people, firefighters, teachers, cops doing? Well, they're moving way the crap out there to Parish and getting these deals on houses, not aware that in the long run, the mileage on their car, the oil changes, the tires, the congestion, and the freaking agony of having to commute that far will eventually level out the playing field of the cost. Most people don't look 10, 20 years down the line when they look at things, when they want something. So the person that wants that big house in the suburbs, they're not going to think about it. They're going to buy that house in the suburbs and think they got a deal because they paid less than half of what somebody paid in the city. But in the long term, the person in the city might have paid more money, but the practicality that they're going to get out of the house, it's going to eventually, in the long run, be a better deal for their life and day-to-day conveniences. An older historic bungalow in Tampa, $380,000. It's a cute and charming property, but it's in a really high crime rate neighborhood. I think if you got to work in Tampa, that bungalow might make more sense. And if you're retired, that house in the outskirts might make more sense because you're not commuting every day. Now, here's what doesn't make sense to me. Ultra luxurious houses for $1.5 million in the heart of Tampa. It looks like they've already had to come down the price like $100,000. Now, don't get me wrong, beautiful homes, but who's really buying that? In fact, here's another one, same style home. They actually went from like 1.5 to less than 1 million, a $440,000 price decrease. $400,000 decreased is a lot of money, but it's just not worth it. And there's a lot of properties out there that when I see them, I'm like, that's absolutely ridiculous. And these modern houses into the millions, to me, make very little sense, and to buyers as well. It's the type of thing that somebody's going to buy brand new, but who wants to be the second owner of a modern home? It's a really tough cookie to sell. It's a luxury item, and sometimes luxury items depreciate pretty well. Example, like if you buy a brand new BMW, it's going to depreciate steadily. The weird thing about real estate, it's technically not supposed to depreciate, but hey, I guess they made of a BMW type real estate. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. But those types of properties to me are absurd. Ultra luxurious and modern house thrown randomly into a normal neighborhood in Tampa, that's just money down the toilet. And if you buy that, good luck trying to sell it to somebody else. Way in the outskirts of Tampa, suburb of Bradenton, for less than $500,000, a 3.2 with a good piece of land. Property needs a lot of work. This is like the Hank Hill special, where like if you're retired but you're still handy and you want to keep yourself busy, you buy a property like this that constantly needs something done to it so that you don't die from depression. Extra structures and landscaping and gardens and trees and fences and stuff that needs to be painted and maintained constantly is the type of thing that really doesn't add a lot of value to the home. It just creates more things to maintain. So that's not the type of thing I would go for. But hey, if you're retiring early and you need a constant project in front of you, this property will keep you busy. Bando in the Hood for $140,000. So your uncle passed away and that's all the money he left you. It's a place to live. It's going to have raccoons crawling through the floor. It's going to constantly need work. And you're going to hear gunshots every once in a while. But hey, if you got $140,000 and you're ready to quit life and get out of the rat race and you're okay with unsanitary and unhealthy and somewhat depressing conditions, then this isn't a bad deal. I wouldn't recommend this for a young person. If you're a young person, you really need to strive for something better. But hey, if you're past your prime and that's all your uncle left you and you just need a place to live where you don't have to worry about stuff, I've had houses paid off that need a lot of work, and you never really get around to doing anything because since it's paid off, there's not a lot of pressure on you. I feel like young people perform better under pressure. So if you're a young person with $140,000, don't touch this. But if you're like past the 40-year mark and you just need a place to live and that's all the money you got and you don't want to have a mortgage and liabilities and none of that crap, you just need a place where you can sleep, $140,000 to live in Florida in a Tampa area, you're not going to find anything better than that. It probably doesn't make sense to throw a lot of money at a property like this, but hey, being close to downtown Tampa, maybe even the land could be worth more than that in the future. If you don't mind living in the hood, there are properties for like under $200,000 right now in the Tampa area. I remember many years ago, you could buy a house in Hialeah or Opelika for like $110,000, and today those houses are worth $500,000. So sometimes you can buy a house in a bad area that needs a lot of work, and 5, 10, 15 years down the line, that neighborhood's worth a lot more, and you made a really good deal. I mean, I just think about Opelika. I could have bought a house in Opelika many years ago, and it looked like a bad investment at the time. Nobody would have thought it would have been a good investment, and look at it today, it is. These days, politics do play a role into real estate. For example, administrations can either help cities or destroy cities. This is Armenia in Tampa. It's a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood. The businesses here are closing. Real estate is plentiful, for lease signs are plentiful, and probably for the remainder of this administration, this area here is going to continue to spiral in a decline. Now, earlier, we were looking at footage along the beaches in Pinellas County, the Tampa Bay beaches, and there the destruction and desolation is due to hurricanes. And let's be fair, the current administration in the state of Florida as well hasn't really helped tourism lately. So on the beaches, you have destruction from hurricanes and policies affecting tourism, and in the inner city, you have a whole different mess due to immigration laws. Now, a lot of people on YouTube advise people to move to other states because of the politics. I have never been one of those people. But the only thing that I will tell you, and that is a real fact that affects real estate, is know what administration's in place and know if they're going to help urban areas or rural areas. The United States right now, it's like that. So if the administration that's in place now supports rural communities, those areas are going to do better and cities are going to get crushed. So I don't like what other YouTubers have done where they tell people, oh, leave California, move to Florida, leave New York. I've never been that type of YouTuber to tell people to make their decisions based on politics. What I'm saying is just be conscious of the effect that certain politics are going to have on places like Tampa. It's a city. Without a doubt, with this administration that we have now, cities are suffering. They're being choked and all of the economy here is going to crap. So this isn't a time to be investing in cities. I like cities, I enjoy cities, but this is a time where cities are dying and being choked out and all the growth is being pushed out into the suburbs. If the administration changes and flips the other way, then maybe the complete opposite can happen. Maybe cities can start thriving again. But the issue in the United States is that every 4 years you can flip either way. And that makes real estate investing very difficult because even if you're not political, you just have to understand the political climate and how it's going to affect real estate. And right now, cities are dying. But moving for politics has been one of the dumbest things that has occurred recently. And a lot of people have fallen for that gimmick, and now we're seeing the result of this. I mean, so many people left New York and California, came to Florida for politics, and now look at the mess that they found here. And if you look at the real estate in those places, while it may not be growing steadily, at least it's maybe plateauing to some degree. So It's one of those deals where people just made short-term decisions that had like long-term effects. The same thing happened in Florida with COVID. People came to Tampa for COVID. Again, it was like a short-term problem, and they made lifelong decisions based on temporary problems. They turned a temporary problem into a long-term problem because they acted too rashly. And a lot of people got on that bandwagon. A lot of people came and invested in Tampa, bought in Tampa, and these are the same people now that are looking at abandoned properties, destroyed hurricane damage, and of course businesses and cities that don't have any customers. So all that to say, don't be that idiot who believes that if you move to another state that the politics in that state are going to make things better. None of that crap really makes a difference. You have to be aware of how it plays a role into everything, but that doesn't mean that you have to make your decisions just based solely on that. And a lot of people unfortunately fell for that gimmick, and well, that's where you're at right now in this real estate market. And a lot of people are still blind to the reality that these prices in Florida still have a long way to drop, because these prices really still don't make any sense. On the southern tip of Tampa Bay, you have Bradenton, Sarasota, and Lakewood Ranch. These are fast-growing cities that unfortunately today have a lot of inventory. But are there any deals here that are worth snatching up? Let's see what's going on here. A 4-3 in the outskirts of Bradenton, literally Lakewood Ranch, $700,000. I think that's absolutely absurd. A complete gut job in Sarasota, $400,000. It's been sitting on the market for a while, and who the crap is going to pay that price? You know, there's a lot of people that have real estate right now, and they're listing it for absolutely absurd prices, and they're not dropping those prices. Just because that exists doesn't mean that that's a price point you should even use as a reference. On the same street, not far away, an inhabitable house just sold for less than that. And I gotta scratch my head and wonder, maybe there's a reason these dilapidated prices are sitting there like if they were real listings. That doesn't make sense. And the person that bought this house, they might have think they got a steal at that price point because, hey, there's a house that's worse down the road that they want more for it, but that nobody's buying it. So it's not really a real reference point. Either way, that house of $400,000, it's a small, nice little house, but $400,000 for a house that small, maybe they even looked at the other house down the road as a reference point, but nobody's going to pay that. So it's not a realistic reference point. But hey, I think a lot of people today that have real estate are listing it for absurd prices, even though there really aren't buyers at those prices. It's happening in the rental market too. It's happening with leases and commercial leasing, and it's happening with houses as well. So don't just look at, well, this is sitting out there for that price tag, so if that's what that's worth, then this is what this is worth. That works if in a time where markets make sense, but in today's market, this is just, it's complete absurdness. There's no logic, or you can't just look at a property and say, well, that house down there is worth that much money, so this is worth that. Those days are gone. So don't ever use properties like that as a reference point. I really hope the person that bought that property didn't look at the other property on the same street and use that as some sort of reference for what their property should have been worth. 10 acres in Lakewood Ranch, $4.3 million. Okay, just to give you a comparison, if you hop down to like Bonita Springs, for example, you can get a house on Barefoot Beach for like half that price, and you have your own private beach in that community. Despite Hurricane Ian, I do believe that a house in Barefoot Beach for $2 million is a steal. I mean, that could be worth $8 or $6 million in the future. There's no telling, because they're not making any more beaches, but there's plenty of places to buy 10 acres and put up a nice little country home. So you can't make more beaches. So I really not sure why prices in Lakewood Ranch have got so ridiculous, but if you're buying acreage on Lakewood Ranch, it is absolutely absurd. I actually believe that the house in Barefoot Beach at $2 million is a better buy than the other one at $4.3 million. And that's like, literally, I would almost pay $4.3 million for the house on Barefoot Beach if that's what it came to. So I don't really see it. Hey, we crossed the bridge. We're now in Palmetto. Interestingly enough, in Bonita Springs for almost the same price. You can buy a house on the Imperial River, which floods almost constantly, which means that this house, it's always going to be flooded. And why a house on the Imperial River prone to flooding is worth as much as a house literally on the Gulf almost, it doesn't make any sense. And that's one of the bizarre things about Bonita Springs, that people are paying ridiculous amounts of money for properties that are literally guaranteed to flood. Bonita Springs is cramped up between Naples and Fort Myers, with the Imperial River right down the middle of the city. The more the city has grown and overdeveloped, when it rains, the Imperial River has nowhere to go but inside people's houses. A small house in Bonita just sold for $430,000, and it's on the Imperial River. It's guaranteed to flood at some point. You know, Bonita Springs is to Naples what Palmetto is to Bradenton. It really ain't that fancy. And somehow people have came to the conclusion that Bonita Springs deserves Naples prices. Maybe along the beach or something, but not along the Imperial River. And I feel like Bonita Springs is really one of the most overvalued markets in Florida that needs an adjustment. And I don't think it's going to come anytime soon. Like, this is Palmetto and Bradenton, but Bonita Springs is the Palmetto of Naples. It isn't all that, but somehow people think it is. Beautification projects, great beaches, all that's good for Bonita. The Imperial River itself is gorgeous, but overdevelopment and lack of infrastructure in Bonita and urban congestion has really made it an unpleasant place. And I think the urban overdevelopment and the contamination from hurricanes have also taken a huge hit. All that makes Bonita Springs actually not be that great. I mean, it was great when it was on the come up, but now that it's overdeveloped and all these things are happening, and flooding and hurricanes and contamination and all that, and now insurance as well for all these properties, like, what are people thinking? It's not worth it. Somebody paid $550 for a small house on Marco Island. That's south of Naples. I think that's actually a deal right there. I think that's a good buy. Marco Island is for the most part completely built up and it functions properly. It's been through a bunch of hurricanes, even direct landfalls, and it builds back up nicely. I think Marco Island really is a good place to buy. And to buy something on Marco Island for that price point that's livable, I think it's a deal. There's little houses on Marco Island right now for less than $500,000. I mean, if you really want to live that Everglades fishing lifestyle, it's hard to beat that. But that house is low-lying. They've built up huge houses all the way around it, and it's a matter of time before it floods. So the liability here is just unmatched. In a bad way. It's going to flood eventually. It's going to flood. There's no doubt about it. For less than $600,000, you can buy a house on Fort Myers Beach that was literally entirely underwater. See, Fort Myers Beach had a 15-foot storm surge. That's literally like the underpass of a bridge. That's how high the water was. But they remodeled it, and for less than $600,000, you can buy a house that was literally entirely submerged in the water. What's the structural integrity of that building? I'm sure you're never going to be able to insure that. That's got to be a cash buyer. There's no way a bank's going to finance that. And, well, that's the reality of Fort Myers Beach. In the past, that would have been into the millions. But today, after Hurricane Ian, I don't think anybody's going to pay that type of money to be on Fort Myers Beach. And it's still a nightmare construction zone on the island. It's not even over yet. It's been over 3 years now, and they still haven't rebuilt everything. So that's definitely not a place you want to be. And I don't think we're going to get another Hurricane Ian on Fort Myers Beach. But the insurance companies, imagine trying to insure a house that at some point was entirely underwater. Out in Naples, you can buy a house in the Golden Gate Estates for $500,000 on some land, new build, beautiful houses. I don't think it's a bad buy, but you just have to remember that this can be replicated. I mean, there is so much land available in the Golden Gate Estates that this is replicatable. I mean, if they want to build 10 more houses like this, they can build them. If they wanted to build 10,000 more houses like this, there's that much land available. So this is a price tag that is going to fluctuate with availability of land, which is plentiful, cost of labor, which can vary. So this isn't something you're going to make a profit on. It's another one of those things where, like, if you want to live in the Golden Gate Estates, you can buy that, and it's a great deal, but it's never going to, I don't think it's going to appreciate. and I don't think it's a good investment. It's just a house that will be nice to live in for that price point. You're in the outskirts of Naples for $500,000 in a new construction with some land. You can't beat that. But as an investment, that's never going to appreciate. I mean, that is something that is so replicatable that there's always going to be another house being built next door just like it. If you have to live in the Naples area, that's not a bad deal, but this is not going to make you money. $1.7 million to live in a big house in Lakewood Ranch. And they've already had to drop the price, of course. If I had that kind of money, I wouldn't live in Lakewood Ranch. I live in Lakewood Ranch now that I'm broke, but like if I had like money into the millions, it wouldn't be here. And don't get me wrong, like I would buy a $700,000 or $800,000 house in Lakewood Ranch, but not a $1.7 million house. And yeah, you got golf courses inside these communities, and the HOA fees are going to be ridiculous. So is that ever going to make you money? I just don't see who on earth is paying that kind of money to live in Lakewood Ranch. It's really the top of a market, and there's only so many people that are looking to buy the most expensive house in the neighborhood. Fort Myers, Florida, San Carlos Park, nearly $500,000 to live in an even crappier version of Bonita Springs. That is an absurd price tag, and I feel bad for her who buys that house. Could you imagine paying almost $500,000 to live in San Carlos Park? Almost $1 million for a big giant house in Lakewood Ranch. Yeah, I can see it. I mean, that's about as much money as you want to spend in Lakewood Ranch. Anything above that in Lakewood Ranch is absurd, but that's probably about like $800,000, $900,000 in Lakewood Ranch for a big giant house. It's not a bad deal. And if there's a price appreciation here that's considerable, it's going to be across the board affecting everybody else, because there is a lot of real estate available in that price range, and there's plenty of land available to create more homes like this in this area. So any appreciation here is going to be across the board and not really site specific. I saved the best for last. Somebody just paid $500,000 for a small house with a pool and a decent sized lot in Bradenton, Florida. Lakewood Ranch, north of 64, kind of over by Rye Road. This house has easy access to 64. It's the same price tag as a new build in Naples, but this property here is at least close to restaurants and things to do. I think out of all the houses we've looked at today, this person here got a deal. But notice it was only on the market for 13 days. This house wasn't on the market forever, which goes to show that there are deals out there. This person just got the deal of a lifetime. They paid less than $500,000 for a house with a pool, nice size lot in a great neighborhood. They're in the suburbs, but they're still close enough to get everything they need. That person there got a good deal. And most properties that are out there right now are not good deals, but that person did really well. If I had that money, I wouldn't think twice about buying that house. But again, it was on the market for 13 days, so the price was right. It went quick. The seller sold the house quickly, and the buyer got a great deal. That's really the type of real estate market you want. So what I want to show you guys on today's video is that there are good deals out there. You just have to be familiar with the landscape, know where you're going to buy, know what's out there, know what's too much, and know what's a deal, and knowing when to jump on an opportunity, because a lot of these houses have been sitting on the market for a long time, but that deal, it went quick. I think that buyer did really well. For that house to lose money considerably, the world would have to be in a really bad situation. Like I said, across the board, things could go up, things could go down, things could take a massive hit. But at the end of the day, at $500,000 in today's market, a house with a pool and some land in Lakewood Ranch, you can't beat that deal. So yes, there are deals out there. You just got to know where to find them, and you got to know to move quick at the right time. Different places and different price points in different cities are going to do different things. There are some segments of the market out there where prices reflect what you're buying, and you can get a deal. I'm not going to tell you you're going to make a huge profit, but you're going to pay what it's worth. But there are other segments of this market right now that are definitely not worth touching. Take, for example, the last two houses that we just looked at, the one in San Carlos and the one in Lakewood Ranch. They're both at just under $500,000. The one in Lakewood Ranch has more land, it has a pool, and it has a better location. It's closer to better beaches, and overall there's more things to do in Lakewood Ranch than there is in the Fort Myers area. Job market up here is better, access to better airports, bigger cities like Tampa. These two, when you compare apples to apples, Fort Myers is seriously overpriced. So Lakewood Ranch, yeah, it could fluctuate up and down with the market, but Fort Myers is seriously overpriced. And that's one thing that you have to just keep in mind, that there are markets like Fort Myers where prices absolutely do not make sense. So if you have $500,000, you can make a somewhat appropriate purchase in Lakewood Ranch for the time in the market, or you can go to Fort Myers and make the mistake of a lifetime. Now, when you look at these two houses, in the future, I could see the house in Lakewood Ranch being worth $700,000. I hope the house in San Carlos Park is never worth $700,000. I don't think it will, but it could. And that's the absurd thing about the real estate market here in Florida, is that things that just don't make sense can happen. But if I had to make a bet, I think the house in Lakewood Ranch will be worth $700,000 before the house in Fort Myers. I think the house in Lakewood Ranch has more potential, about the same price point. It's a better property. You're going to enjoy it more. Fort Myers, at the same price point, has a long way to drop before it correlates with reality. And Lakewood Ranch, I actually think could appreciate. But that's just my own personal opinion. I could be wrong. We could be looking at this video 5 years from now and say, wow, Jose was really wrong about this. That's just my personal opinion. But if I had to take a bet right now on this situation, if the house in San Carlos, the day that house in San Carlos Park was $700,000, life would be a very sad place. The one in Lakewood Ranch, it could be worth $700,000 in the future. I actually anticipate that happening. But that's the absurd thing about the future of real estate market. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. That's why I tell people, find something that's practical, that works for you, and don't worry about, I'm a New York investor. No, don't be an investor, be an enjoyer. Find something that makes you happy and enjoy that to the max, because it's a really unpredictable thing. A lot of people have thrown away their enjoyment with their net worth. If you have money, you have a net worth, enjoy it. Buy a house you want, live where you want to live, and enjoy your money. A lot of people wanting to be investors and wanting to make the right economical decisions and wanting to put their money in the right place have lost everything they had and then enjoy it. So enjoy your money, and perhaps while you enjoy your money, it'll make you money. Because a lot of people don't enjoy their money, don't live where they want to live, don't have fun with the things they have. They want to invest what they have, and then they lose everything and didn't enjoy anything. Enjoy your money. If you have money and you're looking to buy a house that you like, enjoy your money, and don't think so much about what it's going to be worth in the future. Think what's going to make you happy in the next few years, because the future, nobody knows what it has in store. But we do know this. A lot of people have made some really stupid decisions wanting to be investors, but nobody's ever made a stupid decision trying to be happy. Like we say in Spanish, nadie te quita lo bailao. If you enjoy something, you enjoyed it, and you had your best run at it. I hope today's video has been educational for you. And remember that this is nothing more than my personal opinion. That's all this is.